Welcome, everybody, to week 7 of the Audible NFL DFS. Hope you're doing well tonight. We'll just get right into it. We're a little. Oh, I need to mute this so I don't lose myself. All right. With me, as always, my partner Tambo at Toe Tag and Tambo. Tambo, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Yeah, excited, man. Big week ahead. And like you said, there's lots to get into, so might as well just jump right into it.
The obviously the ownership and stuff got out about 30, 45 minutes ago. You have a time to digest that at all? Any initial reactions, comments?
A couple. I mean, the surprising part, I guess, to me is the quarterbacks. Right, with Goff being so low, I know that he's on the road. I know he hasn't been good lately, but just the matchup just seems too good. So him coming in at 7.6 looks pretty appetizing for sort of where I was planning on being at already. Still like Matt Ryan, it just he's going to be double that. Then I'm willing to leverage on the other side more. So I do like Goff a bit there, and then the other one that was interesting there. There's the two of them. It's Kyler and Daniel Jones. I think that game. And I think it was one of the first questions early in the week from Sean Mundell and asked, did anybody like this game? I love that game. I wrote it up last night. I didn't expect Russell to be as low as he is. So, that's surprising as well, I guess. But I still like Kyler more than Russell just because of the game environment and the fact that any competitive game that Kyler's been in so far, especially his last couple, he's been so solid. And with New York getting back, and the Giants, that is, getting back all their weapons pretty much except for Shepard, I think they're going to be competitive. So I like Kyler again in this matchup. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I can think is twofold. I don't think Gurley had. I don't think he'll have too much of a whether Goff was going to be higher owned or not. I could definitely see those two being a little closer. There's not much money savings from one to the other. When it gets down to tomorrow by the time we kick off. My only question with the Falcons, I'm not on them that much, is like they're done, right? They suck. I mean, and if Rams jump them early, you're not going to have the Matt Ryan you had against Atlanta, which I'm hoping most people think that and get on him. Like the 15% to me is ridiculous. So I hope that happens. I'll be 100% fade of him. I don't think these guys by mid-second quarter could start to be thinking about what's my next contract, where's my next job. If they're getting down 14-17 nothing, there isn't going to be the fight to come back. That crowd's already going to be weak, I assume, and then on top of it, if they get down early, it's going to be even worse. So this isn't the same. We're going to come back and fight and have a game. Now, they all professionals, and we've talked about that before, but if they get beat at home pretty bad, I wouldn't be surprised to see Quinn fired on Monday. I mean, I think he's, the next up. So I'm a little hesitant to jump on a Matt Ryan and think, it's the nuts scenario or any of them really. And I'll just fade the entire Falcons. And maybe I'm completely wrong come tomorrow night, but I think it's a massive spot for him to be different in that scenario. And that's me playing gameplay, not necessarily X's and O's type of deal in the sense of, can they physically do it? Sure, they can. I mean, the matchup's good, but they're 1-5. And my biggest fear in that situation is they get down early, they're done. Their season's probably already done. Like they'd have to run off a hell of a run to even get somewhat in it because of the way the division is. But I don't know. That's my biggest fear there. No one else really surprises me. I mean, quarterbacks, normally you can play who you want. I agree with you on the Giants-Cardinals deal. I think that game could be a fun one to watch. Obviously, Barkley coming back. What'll be interesting to see kind of the gameplay and the scheme with him. I mean, will this be the first full game that him and Danny Dimes play together? I mean, I know they played Tampa some, and that when he got hurt though was against the Bucks. So I don't know if they played a full game. So I'm interested to see how the dynamic is there. It could hurt Daniel Jones or help him. Either way, I don't know if we know that for sure. I lean that it'll take some pressure off of him for sure, and he'll be able to dump it off. And then the rest of the guys are getting back. So I think it's a good spot and a good game you could stack up. Running back wise, obviously pretty top heavy. Fournette's clearing away. Do you fade him at all? Or, I mean, do you go low own or you try to match it? I know in your situation, 7,500 lineups is a little bit different, but either way, you still have to decide you get over leveraged in that kind of high spot. Everybody's talked about him almost everywhere as being a smash spot. So do you hedge a little bit, or what do you do there?
Yeah, so you've said it before in golf, and it makes perfect sense. This is a spot I don't think you can just get the field with Fournette because you're just not going to get anywhere. So for me, I'm going over. I haven't decided how much, and I don't really like to go more than 60% anybody, but this is a spot where I might just do it because the spot is so good. His usage is so high. The price is so low. The Bengals are just, there's nothing there. It's just really hard for him, even in that, like one game where he did nothing all game in prime time and then he busts off a 75-yard run at the end of the game. Like he always has something in store, and he just gets so much usage that I don't think I'm going to get too cute there. I think I'm just going to go 50 or 60% and deal with it from there and hope that he does his job. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
Yeah, and we have an interesting situation in which will become of the theory talk tonight is you got Lizard that or Lasered, I guess is technically how you pronounce it. He's not. I don't remember the guy a couple of weeks ago we had that where I talked about just the next up type mentality. I mean, he got in there after, so MVS went out during the game. He happened to come back, but Geronimo went out as well. But he got in there, seemed to be a guy that Rodgers didn't mind trusting, got some targets, got some catches. Obviously, pricing was out before that game even started, so he's dead nuts 3,000. Is it? I mean, what do you think people will do there? Obviously, I have him 6%. I think that's probably massively under, but really, as I dug, I mean, I don't know. Are people just going the other way now and thinking, because normally I'm thinking a guy like this is going to be like 20-30% autofill. And so I've taken the stance that, I'll just move somewhere else. Is he going to go overlooked here or no?
It feels like it. Yeah, I wrote him up my article as a treasure underneath 4K just because even though he's obvious, whatever, and you can call him, quote unquote chalk, it goes back to the podcast what you and I talked about. Is he really chalk? And that's the thing. Even if your projection's way off, Gup, and I'm not saying it is, I don't think it is, but let's say he gets to 10 or 11 or 12, like that could be a huge mistake. We saw it with Aguilar. I used him in the article and talked about him. Aguilar was like 35 or 3,600. Nobody wanted to use him in turn. Well, I'll use him in cash, but he doesn't really have the upside, but he was a trusted individual of Wentz. Not saying, obviously he's a lot longer trust built with Wentz than what Rodgers has with this guy, but at the same time, he ended up going off and getting 2 touchdowns, luck box or not. He got in the box twice. It was a must-have. If this guy's not going to be in 9 out of 10 lineups, I got no problem having 20-25% of him just to make some stuff fit. Because if he does get that same game from Monday night, even minus out the touchdown, he's still fine, at 3K. He's stone minimum. So I like him. I think he's a good play there. I think the bigger one to consider and the big one of the week, back up with Fournette, the running backs don't matter as much in the history of, last 3-4 years when you're looking at chalk players in big, large field GPPs. But what does matter is the wide receivers. And the big one this week is T.Y. Hilton. You 33%. I think you got that right. I think it's that or higher. So what do we do with T.Y. Hilton here? Because he's the one that I'm more considering moving off of. And I got some theories there. But what's your take on T.Y. Hilton?
I mean, obviously I'm big on him. I like him in general. I think he's massively underpriced. We've kind of said that. And obviously the industry think so as well. This is a spot where a person like me, because I'm only doing 3 to 5 lineups, what I'll do is if I'm going to be on him, I'll make sure I'll be creative in the way I build. So kind of like we talked about Wednesday, I just don't see that game going bad for him. I think he's going to get, a shit ton of targets, a lot of catches PPR wise. So a DraftKings slate, and he may, maybe if I'm in FanDuel, if I do both equally, I may fade him in FanDuel in case he doesn't get the high yardage or a touchdown. And DraftKings, he's almost an auto play for me because he winds up. I mean, sometimes he can go 8 for 79 and no touchdowns. Well, in 5,900, it's still all right. I just got to make sure I differentiate myself. It's interesting for someone like you, if you're building 100 lineups. Do you put them in 40 or 40 to 50 to get your ownership on the field? Do you go even, or do you just try to be under leverage there? I don't know that. I don't really know if you. I mean, I don't want you telling your whole strategy, but
I don't mind. Yeah, it's fine. It's good for everybody to know. I mean, especially for this. That's the point of the Audible. For me, I'm actually going the opposite way completely, and I'm almost considering 0 because it's sort of like the Fournette thing. I don't think matching the field is going to do anything for me. I think he's in a great spot. I get it, but man. A wide receiver at that ownership. It's, I never fade just because ownership. I wrote this one up as well as one of my main pivots of the week, but I could definitely see a scenario. And it was an interesting pivot to write up because normally it's okay. You've got it right here and we can talk about this, but Robert Woods in your rankings, I know that they're not the be all end all, but they still mean something. Robert Woods, same price tag with a low owned Goff, stands out as right away automatic leverage. He's 20% less owned. That's a play you could go to against an Atlanta secondary that's just decimated. So I don't mind that one, but I wrote it up a little bit different. And I said, look, I'm talking about maybe just leaving TY out completely, use them in like cash and sort of a main lineup, maybe one of my 3 big main lineups, and then differentiating in other ways. But I like Marlon Mack, and not to switch back to the position, but just to say that that's a leverage position within the same team. What if, Marlon Mack gets 2 of those early touchdowns? They don't need TY that much. There's not a lot of throwing downs throughout the game, and TY ends up with a 5 for 70 line. It's not going to kill you, but it's definitely not going to win you any GPPs with, a 5 for 79 or a 5 for 89 line, if that's what it comes down to, because he's sort of that one big play. I definitely like TY, but it's a double down on the ownership and the fact that you got Mack there with a good offensive line, on top of the fact that you got Woods there. Another guy we didn't even talk about yet, but ties into the Kyler play, is Larry Fitzgerald. We still haven't heard for sure yet, but I'm guessing Kirk's not going to go. And Larry Fitz is only $200 more and is another good pivot, in my opinion, that he still shows up high owned, 22, but that's 10% less than TY. And again, I think it's an opportunity for him and Robert Woods to blow up. So it's not like there's not choices there. And that's really my issue with TY at 5,900. I got a little bit more trouble with that play than something like with a Fournette, where it's just, smash it and go, guaranteed volume unless he gets injured.
Yeah, and I think, and it gets a little hard because we can only go into so much strategy on a deal like this. But, and some of the stuff that, I'm making notes of and writing as we progress as a business, and then being able to elaborate on some of that thinking. I had a guy I was talking to the other night, where he asked a great question of very detailed. I hate this guy or this guy. Like it just pisses me off. I'm like, if you're just going to give me that, just go look at the rankings. And I mean, obviously that's what I'm going to default to, but this guy was like very methodical, and I'm doing a 3 max Sunday slate. I'm only going to put 1 bullet in there. If I want to play TY, what do I have to do to be different in that situation? Being a third less leverage because I'm not 3 max and type of deal. And it was a great question to me, because obviously I could tell he's thinking about the process and understanding, okay, I love this guy. I want to be on him. I know my position in the contest I've chosen. If I want to be on him, how do I have to be different type of deal? And for me, like I could pair up a TY, a Doyle, a Goff, and a Woods. And I got 2 stacks there, Goff, Woods, who I like. I got Doyle, who's 1% with TY. I think both could get a lot of catches. And my total ownership projection type deal covers up that TY in a one-off build, in a bullet or a 3 max type deal. What I can't do is start Lazard, TY, Fournette. You're probably going to have a difficult time, making your lineup a little, unique in that sense. It's real difficult, but it may work out. But that's the kind of talk of, you can pick your spots, and we've talked about it before, to just stay on your guy, but you have to know the strategy to get different elsewhere. We already talked about the Giants cards. Josh Allen has a soft matchup. With Zay gone now, where do you think the targets go? Do you think Knox is going to get more targets? Any thoughts on Allen? Obviously, upside rushing makes him appealing more than anything. I could see a slow-paced game there. I don't know if he makes my kind of pool, but what about you?
He'll make my pool. The best part about Allen this week, especially for big, large field MME, is what I love, is that they're projected for 29 points, in a smash spot. And I know it could just be all running back, but you got to remember the running backs aren't as safe to play in DFS either, because like you just said, Josh Allen can run in 3 touchdowns, and that's where his upside comes from. So I don't mind playing naked Josh Allen. I don't mind, putting him with maybe one guy. I don't really like a double stack with Josh Allen. I like using like him and John Brown is the obvious one. You could go him and what's his name? Dawson Knox, I want to say.
Knox,
and then Knox. And then you got Tyler Kroft, who's back. So you could, do one of those guys, but I think those are kind of, thin plays. And then you got Duke Williams, right? And then you got Singletary. There is some one-offs, but I'm not really planning on double stacking Josh Allen. Those targets will certainly get moved around, but the best part, and why I think you still got to play some of them in your large field builds, is because they're projected to put up points, just nobody knows where. So guess what people are doing is they're just not clicking the button, because they're going to score, but I don't know where. Well, someone's going to get that combination right, And if it ends up being the guy you need to break the slate, then you're off. And because you couldn't figure out where it went, you're going to have to make some tough decisions to fit those into your lineups.
Yeah, and I think it goes the other way in a spot on. First of all, it's one of the lowest game, if not the lowest totals on the slate. I think maybe Bears Saints is lower, but so yeah, you don't want to load up. I think people think you have to stack, especially at quarterback, and you don't want to load up on a game that, regardless of Buffalo has one of the highest point totals, if not the highest on the slate for their team. Some of that can come from defense. It can come from, I mean, there's all kinds of things that can be baked into that. And in theory, most sharps would tell you when you got a game total at that and a team total, I mean, a point spread as high as it is, 16 and a half, 17, more times than not, the under is probably going to be the play to play there. And that brings a little betting into it, but I just say be cautious of the high point total. And it's a great spot to say, I'll just take Allen, and vice versa. If you get to let's say like a Jalen Hurts or a Tua in college, where it's so hard to figure out who they're going to go to, don't be afraid to play the dual threat, high octane quarterback with none of his options, because you don't want to, if you, especially like Alabama, right? Same scenario here with some of these great, quarterbacks in the NFL. You pick the wrong one and you're dead. But if you just take the quarterback like a Josh Allen, you can kind of be different there. And I don't think you have to always stack with your quarterback. And I think most people think they have to.
Yeah, one more thing I would just say quick too, Gab, sorry, but is another correlation that's, goes way overlooked across the industry. That's a bit sneaky, especially in big field GPPs, is to stack a mobile quarterback with their defense. So here's the thing. This week, an expensive defense is Buffalo. No one knows, they're just plugging that in. They don't know who to put with that either. You could put Josh Allen and the defense in, and this is an exact scenario you'd want to do that, because he could rush in 2 touchdowns, make value at his play, use some random like Tyler Kroft, who no one's going to really go with that stack very, very hardcore. So you're not going to be losing much there if he does connect, and that still boosts his points up. And then they're up 25-0 or 24-0, whatever the score ends up being at that point. And then the defense goes to work and hammers them, and you've got just those 2 pieces. But it fits with a 29-point team total, a game total that's just barely higher than that, meaning the other team's not going to score likely. And that theory could work. It's, again, you got to tell a story with your lineups, but that's an under-owned play that I'd like to use in a spot like this.
Yeah, and I mentioned Wednesday, I was still big on the Bills, even though high dollar, but I did not expect them to be close to 20% projected with the dollar. Yeah. But I think with some of the value that we have on the slate, people are wanting to find a way to get the Bears in. And I think there's some options there. I know we're both high on a couple of lower defenses that you could just be different.
Yeah.
Let's see. Seems to be no interest in 49ers playing. Not sure which running back to play. Is there anything there with such a big favorite on the road? I personally like the spots betting wise for the Skins, but it's a 10-point spread, so it doesn't mean I hate the 49ers. I'm a big Coleman fan in general. I was preseason on him pretty good. I don't think the quarterback has much high upside. It's not a high octane offense. They're going to rely on their defense, run the ball, especially on the road. Early start for them coming from the West Coast. Is there anybody besides Coleman and the defense and Kettle that you would look at? Those are the 3 that I would eye from that game.
Yeah, Kittle's only interesting. I actually talked him off on the pod, and I'm not really on him anymore still. Like, I didn't get onto him or anything, but I just think it's interesting because of the Engram, situation, which we'll get to in a second, the ownership and whatnot. So I guess, yes, he's a good pivot. I like Coleman, like you said. You could split it a little bit with Breda, right? Or Breda, I should say. And then you've got the defense there. So that's sort of the plays. And then if you're looking for one wide receiver in that game, with the fact that Debo is out, I don't mind Pettis. Pettis is a fair price. I think that, if you're looking for a one-off and you want to get off the running game that everyone's on and sort of leverage it, the opposite effect of what I'm doing with going with, Hilton up to Mac, you could go off the running backs where people can't make a decision and go to one wide receiver. And I think Pettis has got quite a bit of work lately, and we're just sort of waiting to see how that can go from here. And this is a good spot. It's not like there's anything scary in that Washington secondary for him. So if it happens early and he gets off, I wouldn't be surprised for his price.
Yeah, and I think I lean Coleman a little bit because I think he could potentially be more involved in the passing game if it gets to that point, but agree with what you said as well.
Yeah.
We already talked about Lazard. We won't go there. Curious Gup's thought on Tambo, Mac pivot. Would you consider a QB running back? I was on Mac Wednesday, so nothing's really changed for me there. And I certainly, he says QB running back wide receiver stack. Yeah, and I'll go back to Doyle's probably going to be, I would almost guarantee he's going to be in one of my 3 lineups or 5, whatever I wind up sticking on. So I'm not afraid of any of those 4 kind of combinations. and then running it back with some Houston side as well. We already know your thoughts, or they can read the article. What Packers wide receivers are you considering? Obviously, Lazard. Will you go to, an MVS type deal? Just I'm thinking not many may be on them, but this may be a higher scoring game with Oakland and Josh Jacobs and those guys. I mean, we saw the Packers defense. They're good, but they can be run on. I think Jacobs will establish a run. I think Carr has been, fairly accurate I think he's going under the radar a hair for how decent they've been playing and managing the clock. Not to turn over a ton. Do you think there's worthy of playing two wide receivers from Green Bay?
I think there's more wide receivers you can play, and I'll state them, like you said, Lazard or whatever, and then you got Kumaro. And now the thing was today is Allison got bumped back to questionable, and MVS we're still not sure on. If MVS plays, I'll definitely play MVS, and I'll actually probably lower my exposure to Lazard, just because then you've got, Jimmy Graham is back. So you got Jimmy Graham, you've got MVS, you've got Kumaro, you've got other guys there that Rodgers can use. I get that Lazard's stone lock. I'm just saying then I won't be going as crazy, and I'd expect his ownership to come down the minute, to that 6.9 or less that you've got him at right now, because you're, like we said, we kind of feel like he could be a little bit higher. I think he'd come down. But for me, I won't play more than one in a lineup together. I still don't have interest in Rodgers, regardless if MVS is back. I like the Jacobs call. You've been on it since Wednesday. I like that. I've come around quite a bit. But I like this game for a secondary correlation or a mini stack with using Jacobs and using one of those wide receivers who we just mentioned, whether you use Kumaro, Lazard, or if MVS plays, and use them in a stack against Jacobs. Jacobs does his job, which means then they got to pass. I just don't see this game blowing up and being some super high total, crazy, score fest or shootout. So I'm not going to go load it up, but I like those mini plays, and you were on Jacobs since Wednesdays. I'm with you there now. I like that price.
Yeah, and I definitely, if you want to be unique, I can see this being a pretty good game, but this is another scenario, to be honest with you. It depends on what we find out in the morning. I don't mind a naked Aaron Rodgers here. He's got a little bit of rushing potential, running the ball. If it's just an unknown of who he's going to be throwing the ball to, I can go Aaron Rodgers, Josh Jacobs, and some other piece, like you said, a mini type stack, especially in Aaron Rodgers at 1.9%. If I'm building 20 plus lineups, I definitely get some of him in there and not worry about the wide receivers if I don't have to, unless it just becomes, like you said, if Allison's out or someone's officially out before the game, then you put, Lazard in there, and then, Jacobs, Rodgers type of deal, something like that. But you could definitely play a naked Rodgers in this scenario. Go back to the questions. Any updates on DJ? I've been handling a lot of things behind the scenes, as you well know. Some of it I can't really talk about, but so I'm behind on my injury gauging or reporting. Is there an update on DJ? I don't know if there is.
So yesterday what happened is that basically they said if it was Friday, if the game was today, this is Friday, then he wouldn't have played. But it does seem like quite a bit of posturing. And there was another reporter, a beat reporter, that spoke to DJ and heard him say feels fine, he's going to be good to go. So I would suspect that it's posturing, right, from Kingsbury, and then that he's going to be in the game on Sunday. So that's when you got to wait on, especially if you're building a lot of lineups. Like if you're filling in Edmonds now as an automatic, the crazy part is you might fall into it anyway, because I don't think, Edmonds is a bad play. And it feels like Kirk is going to be out as well, which they used him last week. They use Edmonds in that spot as well without Kirk as sort of a, Kyler hasn't had great success yet with the sure fields. We talked about Isabella before in the past, not even getting into the games. The Keyshawn Johnsons can't quite get there, it seems. The long passes just aren't working out for him I shouldn't say long passes, the outside game hasn't got working for him yet. This is a spot it could, but we don't know that. So I don't mind Edmonds still, even if Johnson plays, but I'm not going to load up on him and say that he's some automatic lock unless DJ's out, and then he becomes a more solid play, even more solid than now at 4,700. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah, and the second part of this question was, does it change our thoughts on Murray? And kind of piggybacking off what you said a little bit, whether it's DJ or Edmonds, it doesn't affect Murray to me, because Edmonds fills that role where, to the point, it's not going to affect Murray's production one way or the other. It doesn't mean I'm going to go to Edmonds, but it certainly doesn't get me off Murray if DJ is out, if that makes sense. I believe that's a noon kickoff in New York. I don't know if JB can tell me in my ear, but
it is. Yeah. We'll get to know. We'll know before the game kicks off.
So that's, unlike normal with Arizona, we kind of get fucked on them at that 3:00 range, but this week we'll know. If he's out, I'm putting Edmonds in with Murray all day. I don't even know his price. I'm assuming somewhere in the threes, but
Well, no, it's expensive. It's 4,700. It's built in because they were
okay.
suspecting it. But like I said, the other thing you remember is if Kirk is out, I bet you the news comes out overnight. It's going to be Schefter pop it out, say DJ's going to play, Kirk they're going to hold off. That's what I'm suspecting. I'm no, genius here, whiz, but that's what I'm expecting. If that happens, I still don't hate Edmonds. I'm just saying don't go crazy with it. Now, if it's DJ's out, Kirk's out, then I'm telling you Evans might get in 60% of my lineups at that price because Kyler's mobile. Kyler is accurate, efficient. Everything's solid with him. I like the matchup. I mean, you can play. It doesn't affect my thoughts on Murray either way, but I don't mind them both together. I don't mind Murray naked, and I don't mind Edmonds in a lot of lineups if that news came out that DJ was out. But I suspect he'll be in which case I still love Kyler. I think Kyler can be played by himself if you have to. He's fine.
Yeah, and there's enough on the Giant side with a not so hot Cardinals D overall. I mean, they're playing hard, which I like. So it's different than they just suck. I think it's just new and they're trying to adapt. But I think New York should be able to do some. But I could literally play Kyler and Barkley, which is way high up there in price, but with some other pieces and stack elsewhere and both be singles on those. Although I think there are options there. Before we go to the live YouTube chat, I see some questions rolling in there. On running backs, is there any sneaky? So, I mean, obviously Fournette, Cook, Barkley, Carson, Freeman even. Let's see, Latavius Murray, Josh Jacobs, Tevin Coleman, all double-digit ownership percentages. Your thoughts on Murray in general? Murray's a hard runner. Very tough game on the road against Chicago. I don't know if that's a perfect scenario, but I don't know if that's an automatic plug-in just because Kamara is out. What are your thoughts?
Agree as well. So I'm thinking of it a couple different ways. One is that just the volume alone and his price tag, it is what it is. I kind of like him more than the Kerryon Johnson hype, even though your ownership projections show a little bit. There's guys talk about using Kerryon in cash. So, to me, I'm not really feeling that one as much against Minnesota as I am because Akeem Hicks is out for Chicago. I know it's still a tough game. It's just a product of usage, right? I think you'll still get the goal line carries. You'll still get quite a few touches, 15, 18 touches at that price. Teddy hasn't been terrible. So, if they can still move around, he can get some check downs. I'm not super high on him, but I think, I'd be over the 10% with him because we already know Kamara's out. So, the other way to take it, and we'll get to defenses, but Chicago D definitely got a little bit better with no Jared Cook, no Kamara, mainly Kamara, forget Cook, but I'm just saying that spot looks a little bit better for them there. But sneaky guys, a couple more just to rattle off right quick. I think the big one is going to be Todd Gurley. I don't know. No one's really talking about it, but the fact of the matter is that, Marlon Brown looks like he's going to be out and he didn't do shit last week anyway. And then you got Henderson there for super cheap, but if this game does turn into the Rams get up early and keep it rolling, it could easily be because of Gurley. And what if it does get a little bit close and we do end up getting the opposite, sort of what you're thinking there, and get the shootout? Gurley could be heavily involved. You're not going to see Gurley at $6,400 at 4% ownership very often. And he says he's feeling pretty good to go. So I like Gurley. And then another one I like is Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry's showing up here at 5%. At home, great spot. I like the defense paired up with them as another sneaky play. I still like Henry. What's your thoughts on Derrick Henry, Gup?
Well, that was my next question was, kind of a bust last week. A lot of people got on him in the afternoon because I believe it was Fournette played the Broncos the week before and smashed them. So a letdown spot as far as recency bias, mentality wise. They get the Chargers, slight advantage up front, I believe. Mm-hmm. You got to get touchdowns for him to return, I think. And you could get a lot. He could have a 20, 24 plus touch game at 100, 105. I don't mind him at 5,800. I get concerned without touchdowns, especially in a very low projected scoring game. The ceiling part of him. I think the floor, is a great floor play. I think he'll return, a 3x value all day. And so if you've got a lot of risk already in your lineup, he could certainly be that piece to come in at 5,800 and just be like, all right, I can get my 15, maybe get 25 on a good day with a touchdown or two, and I got that piece. But if you're being pretty conservative on the floor basis with the rest of your lineup, I wouldn't add him to it because he's not like a super high upside in this game. But I do like him. He was on my list to talk about when these.
But one more note, real quick, is we don't talk about it enough or a lot. It's not a big deal because I know not everybody plays there, but he's way more, to Gup's point, of a smash on FanDuel. $6,500 on FanDuel, and he's a touchdown dependent back. The other thing too, people might not remember is, what is it? Tannehill's in the game now, right? So that, everyone, that's one of the ones where Gup hit on it on Wednesday. And I chimed in, but we talked about it's not always what you think is going to happen when the backup comes in. We talked about it in wide receiver perspective and already went through that. But in a quarterback perspective, everyone just assumes, okay, now who's Tannehill going to throw to? His history's with, he likes the slot. He's going to go to Humphreys. It's going to be like this. It has to go that way. That's not true at all. They might say, you know what? Pound the other side, give it to Henry. Let's blow him down their throat 40 times this game. And guess what? It only takes one. How many times have you seen Henry bust an 80-yard touchdown? I remember like 3 in recent last, 10 games for him. So it's just one of those things with Derrick Henry. You got to try him. Now that means, yes, he would still equate to value on DraftKings. I'm just saying, if you're worried about that situation, and because we have some Latavius Murray, $5,100, Jacobs, $5,000, we got a lot of, max, whatever you're liking at these price tags on DraftKings, get them in on FanDuel, $6,500. The defense is cheap over there as well. $4,200. Let them blow the doors off the Chargers and run it down their throat 30 times. I think he's a great play.
Yeah, and it could be a good play at the super draft if he's a 1.5, 1.7 time X guy. I hadn't got to that build yet, but a great point about the other platforms. He's not a big PPR guy, although he's gotten some at times. So he could smash in those kind of spots. I don't play a lot of FanDuel, so I always forget that, but I do know that the PPR gets I think it's 0, isn't it, or is it half a point?
Half, I believe.
Yeah, so I mean, definitely a difference maker there. Wide receiver wise, nothing. I mean, obviously some really high owned with Fitzgerald, Ty, Julio, which I'll be 100% off. I'll let people. Well, he's 11%. He's not crazy. Kupp and Woods. Woods is almost half the ownership, which we kind of thought Wednesday, and I like him. Boyd, DJ Chark's doing these kind of guys. Are you blending a lot of these guys? Or are you trying to stick, around high upside type plays, or where are you at wide receiver?
I'm still going for high upside, right? But look at a guy like Lockett. Everyone's just scared of Marlon Humphrey. We don't even know, Greg Cosell does a great matchup show. He's a tape guy. He doesn't give a shit about DFS or fantasy points. He just watches the tape and tells you what he sees. Yes, Lockett plays in the slot, but they move him around, and he suspects that Marlon Humphrey, who's been the shutdown, corner for the Ravens, they want to pick up Metcalf as the big dog, as the big dude. Let's hold him down. And if they can get Lockett loose, then so be it. But at the same time, you can do whatever you want to Lockett. Look at that touchdown he had a couple weeks ago in the end zone, toe tapping it back when, 90% of the guys can't make that. We know Wilson loves him. I think if he's going to be 6%, I'll have 15%, no problem. You mentioned, Julio. Don't know why people, I think he comes in higher than 11 still, just because all the people that are on those game stacks. And I already wrote that one up. I still like to go back to Hopkins just because, everyone's worried that he only caught 9 for 55. He's scoring 18 points and you're mad. Yes, I know it's his floor and we'd like more, but guess what? I'm going to pay for that, especially when guys are going to pay for, Julio, who I think if you're bringing in Jalen Ramsey, how are you not going to tell him this week? Your job is to show yourself and go lock down Julio and hold Julio to 6 for 80. It's still a great game. It's still a good game for Julio, but it's not going to come near that price tag. And then all of a sudden Hopkins blows up and everyone says, oh, of course, this week after we're off of him, we'll stop going off of him. Everyone that went off of Will Fuller after 4 weeks, I mean, they really didn't for whatever reason. The chalk was still there, but there was enough people, I bet you, that weren't part of that group that stayed sharp and stayed on him. And guess what? He went off for like 50 points. So, I like those guys you mentioned. Larry Fitz, to me, like I said, even with his ownership, was sort of the only big chalk play that I like. And then, even Kupp, I'm going to be underweight. There's, one more mention is you like Woods. I like him, but Brandon Cooks, $500 cheaper than Hilton. And he's basically the same guy. Now, I mean, Hilton's better. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying when you talk about Cooks, forget all the bullshit about Hilton's played Houston before and done well. Of course he has. It's a division game. He's played him a million times. Some of the stats that people are showing are dating back to 2014. Zero relevance to these days. Zero relevance to Brissett, to any of this stuff. You talk about Hilton, though, and you talk about Cooks. You talk about fast, small, shifty dudes, good inside, run track on these dudes. He's got a good matchup himself. I think Cooks could blow the doors off, this team and be the guy there as well when there's no pressure. Atlanta's shown the ability to put no pressure on a quarterback. A lot of people are seeing Goff, and back to this ownership thing with him, as, he sucks with, on the road. He sucks with pressure. If you really dig into the stats, he sucks when there's pressure on him. He doesn't just suck on the road. Atlanta can't generate pressure. That means more time. Guess who can get loose when there's more time? Brandon Cooks. Really like him at 5% ownership. You got him here. Even if he's 10, I'll be over.
Yeah, I mean, so another guy I had in that scenario was Diggs. I think a lot of people are gonna. I mean, it looks like at least based on this, 3%, 4%. He got his last week, and they're going to move off. But I don't. I mean, he still has a good matchup against Detroit this week. They are on the road. He's certainly, especially if you're a 10, 20 plus guy lineup, to have 8% of him and you're double the field is a no brainer to me. I don't think like he had a great track. Like it's not like he's just going to have a one good game this year. He's certainly a guy I'd run it back to. Even a single play, you could stack in that game per se, but he's kind of like Fuller to me was 3 weeks ago, right? He had his big game. Then next week, hardly anybody was on him and they still haven't come back. I could see that happening in that kind of situation with Diggs. And that game's not really on much of a radar anyways, but we don't know about Detroit yet. The perception is that they're overrated, but if they come out scoring and, force Minnesota to, I mean, that game could turn into a pretty good game to look at as a difference maker. As far as the YouTube, we'll hit some of these and we'll wrap it up for the night. See if there's any we haven't. I agree. Remember, the Rams haven't really been good this year. I do, but I do think this is we kind of hit on that. Aaron Rodgers at that percentage is a big play. I like Rodgers, said you could play him naked. I don't know if these guys joined late. I think Tambo was in the same scenario. You could be different with Rodgers. We'll have to wait on some news on the wide receivers, but there's definitely availability there. What's a sneaky pivot off of Hunter Henry looking at the ownership, in your opinion?
Let me see what you've got then. I think what happened with Henry is as the week went on, he's fine himself. I think many people are going away from it, but I'll pull your numbers just to see. But what's he at here with you?
23%. He's the highest. Evan Ingram's 18. I mean, you got 5 guys that are dominating the rest of the field. So really, I mean,
I was gonna say, yeah, you can. I have got to dig in more. I feel like the perception that I'm hearing and seeing around the industry is that people started on him, and now that there's these other play, Waller came up because Tyrell Williams is going to be out. Mark Andrews because Marquise Brown's looking like he's going to be out, and Doyle, you mentioned Doyle 1% is silly. That's you want to automatically pivot. Someone asked earlier how you want to get different with Hilton.
Right.
Run your Brissett stack with Doyle and him. You got low ownership on Brissett. You got low ownership on Doyle. They're both in great spots. Ebron just got back to practice on Friday. So I'm not saying he can't be Ebron. I'm just saying, and you want to use him, he's the same thing. He's down there at 2%. Go ahead. I'm just saying there's a couple of guys there. So there's that. Mine is Mark Andrews. He's showing up here, I think, at 15. Yeah, see, I was hoping he'd be a little less, but I still like him. I think he's a wide receiver 1 now for $4,900. That's a fair price. There's not many wide receiver 1s that I know of up in the wide receiver pool for that. And then, yeah, I'm not as big on Hooper. I guess he's going to show up in game stacks, so I wouldn't really pivot there. I like Andrews. I like Waller. I like Doyle. Yeah, it gets thin after that, though, Gup. I will tell you that. It's not much more. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, Doyle could be just 5 lineups, 100% type deal, just because of the price, the upside, I don't care for Hooper. I don't care for any Falcons. I may die on that sword tomorrow, but Ingram at that kind of percentage and that price, I don't think he's that dominant for me to, and people don't forget it's big. Barkley hadn't been there, and so his safe gate's been Ingram. He's going to be able to dump off to Barkley more now, and I'd rather have the ball in Barkley's hand than I would Ingram. So I think Ingram gets an impact at some. That price is just ridiculous. I like Kettle, but at 6,700%, that's a toss-up to me.
My God, at 3%?
I'd rather go to Andrews, but if you're going to run like a Coleman Kettle or a Kettle defense type stack, and I wouldn't mind having Doyle as my tight end and Kettle as my flex, and he's basically a wide receiver 1 to me in that scenario at 6,700 with massive ownership leverage. So that's probably it. Maybe Everett if you're trying to get creative with the Ram stack, but I like Cooks, like you said, as a differential maker over Everett. But you could play both with Woods or Kupp. If you're going to go Kupp and you wanted to go Everett, that may give you a little bit of leverage. So any of those kind of combinations. I think that's so. With what do you think about Trubisky being back? Gabriel's 3,900. Does it impact? Do you get off Robinson? Do you play Robinson? Do you play anybody from the Bears in this scenario? or do you think they just try to run the ball, smash, play great D, and win the game at home?
I still think that's what they try and do. I mean, I'm not going to stack up Chicago, but the one play I do like is actually at the same price as Gabriel is Miller, because the spot that they get smashed is in the slot. And because normally it's what's his name? I want to say PJ Williams, but I forget what his name is now for the Saints, their slot corner, and I forget, it just slipped my mind, tipped my tongue, but he's out. So and he sucks. So if it's his backup that's playing, imagine how bad you have to be to be his backup, is my theory on that. So there's two scenarios. One, they continue to use, Miller in the slot. I think he's 85% of his plays out of the slot this season. And that's where like they've given up like 5 touchdowns. Or they say, okay, let's be smart here. Let's get Allen Robinson in the slot and just use our best guy in the slot and move him around. And then in that case, because Lattimore has been shutting guys down, so that's sort of scaring people off. What did you have Miller at up here? I didn't see. It looks like, Robinson, 7%. So yeah. I'm probably going to have 15% Robinson and get double the field there, just as a one-off, and I can even use them across from Latavius Murray's, again, as another mini stack, using, the thoughts of Murray gets the points, Chicago has to bounce back, and vice versa. So I like Robinson and Miller is the two guys I'd like in that game.
Yeah, I wouldn't allocate a lot of my resources to a game that's got a 38.5 game total for me personally. So just taking a piece or two on someone you think will get there, a Bears D, if they struggle. If New Orleans hasn't been in a position yet to have to throw the ball up and come back. So if for some reason Chicago can come out, create some turnovers, get up 10, 14 points and put Bridgewater in a passing situation without Kamara, it's a game script where the Bears D could be in play there. So to wrap it up, are you eating any of the chalk defenses this week, or are you going to go down to the cheaper ones? Obviously, I think we both were on the Colts, which they're the second highest, but still only 11%. So 89 out of 100 guys aren't going to have them. At $2,000, a sack potential there at home. I certainly will have plenty of Colts. I don't mind some Bills, especially let's say Lazard winds up playing and we have an out of Allison or MVS. So I'm confident in Lazard. I don't mind putting the Bills in that kind of build type deal. Anybody else, or what are your thoughts on Colts, Bills, and the rest?
Still like the Colts. Definitely like the Bears a little bit more now. Like you said, I think this game just could get sluggish. That's why I don't want to have too many pieces, as you just mentioned, sort of those one-off spots, but also, just the fact that, like I said, if I'm pivoting, against, or trying to leverage, I should say, against the field, if that Murray ownership gets up there for New Orleans, then, I could easily just see Chicago shutting them down. And then you double down, you crush all the Murray owners and pick up the points of the Chicago defense. So you sort of double down. That's the way to look at it. I definitely like a little bit more since the podcast, a pivot from the Bills that I just talked about. I like using them in like a naked Allen lineup. And a lot of that situation with chalk, I'm using, and people always ask, how can you get different with it? I'm using it in a way like that. Like I'll use Allen and the Bills. That I think that's unique enough that I'm not going to be really on the chalk Bills by themselves. I'm having something with it that's different. But I do like the 49ers. I've been stressing over this all week, not stressing over, but trying to figure something out. Like who from Washington even does anything? Like you talked about on the pod on Wednesday, we didn't really go into San Francisco as a whole, but you said like this defense is for real. And you knew that, and you mentioned it. They're $200 cheaper. They're half the ownership. I really don't even know how Washington scores points here. Like who do they have? What's going to happen? I don't see any way.
Yeah. The only way I'd go for San Fran, I'm actually more inclined to play the Redskins over 49ers because of the massive, kind of like the Jets last week. The main reason is because of Callahan, the fill-in coach. They're going to try to establish a run the ball. I don't know if they'll be able to your point. That's the roll of the dice. If they're able to run the ball and control it, play a very, very slow game and not force the passing and the turnovers, that's what they're going to try to do, which will limit dropbacks and interceptions and fumbles and stuff like that. Now, if they're down 21-0 real easy or something like that, 17-3, 17-7, then the 49ers do come into play. And I think the potential, shutout 3-7 points is definitely in play. So it's definitely a great pivot spot. Walking through the game script, I obviously like the Skins plus 10 in the spot only because San Francisco coming off of a high point, traveling West Coast to East Coast, the early rooster start. Betting wise, I'm on the Skins and like it. For that reason, it's hard. It's just thinking through that, I go, all right, maybe that's not the best play, and I just kind of leave it alone. But I could also separate that and go, hey, Coleman in the defense and move on. Or we just saw the Kettle 3% ownership. You go Kettle in the 49ers and then just stack around it with some other games. That gives you enough leverage, and you don't have to worry about the price tag.
Yeah, and to be clear, and good point you made is, I never take a defense hoping that it's a shutout, because you don't get any. The points from a shutout is nothing. Like, it doesn't really. There's no bonus for shutout. It just means they didn't score any points, so hence they don't get a few of the. You don't lose X amount of points from them scoring. I'm talking about. I don't think they'll be able to run the ball, to what Gup just said, and it's only AP. They don't even have Chris Thompson. So it's only AP, who they just rushed out there a bunch of times last week, and he sort of did his thing. But guess what? There's that. Case Keenum back from injury. Guess what? If he goes down again, even by himself, I think he is going to have to throw. He makes a bunch of mistakes. Haskins, we saw the time that he got in there, wasn't great. They start picking off those balls. These guys, Forrest, what is it? DeBuckner or Forrest? I forget how to say his name now. DeForest Buckner. And then you got D Ford and you got Nick Bosa, and all these guys on that front line are going to be coming for him. I think they're scooping scores. I think I've never had this much conviction on a defense pivot than right now on this one. I just really can't see it. So if I die on that sword, I will. But I'm going to be heavier on them than most defenses this week, just because of that. And then the Colts, as we mentioned, are my cheap guy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for sure, the Colts is my cheap as well. Only in the sense because of potential sacks and stuff like you said. The opposite of low scoring game is, I don't care how many points Houston scores. I'm banking on 4 or 5 sacks, a strip fumble, maybe a scoop and score, something like that. And Houston may still put up 30 points, but at $2,000, you got some upside there. Tambo, anything else before we wrap it up? I'll be away for a couple hours, and then I'll be back in the Slack later on tonight answering questions. We went a little longer tonight, being that I couldn't get full deep dive final thoughts, but the rankings and ownerships were posted. We'll direct people to watch the replay of this if they have questions. I think we covered about everything you could possibly cover for this slate. A lot of injuries we're still waiting on. Myself or Tambo will post as soon as we see anything that's confirmed, and most of the time someone in the Slack posted anyway. So make sure you're following that football channel, because someone will update on the injuries, and we've kind of given our if or situations enough where you kind of know where we stand. Anything for you before we wrap it up?
One more came in just about the back to defense, was the Raiders defense as sort of a mini pivot off of the Colts, because they're $100 cheaper. And you compare them with, everyone again assumes this Green Bay side, and what are they going to do now? If they're down all these guys, there is some potential there. So I don't hate it, but it'd be, for me, it's at 150 entries where I'm going to be getting to that with a pairing with Jacobs and the Raiders D. Other than that, Gup said it best, guys. Good luck this week. Thank you for everything. Appreciate all of you posting in the Slack as you can of things that you find. Let's wait on that injury news tonight, and then let's crush this week 7.
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting slate. Overall, I think much lower scoring slate. I think there's a couple of hot spots that could happen, but I think we're week 7 now. So you got injuries, you got attrition, you got a lot of things going on, and some defenses that match up well this week that I don't think we'll see a 304 or whatever. That's just a projection on my part. So, think in the moment, not, reactive to prior thinking you have to have the nuts. I mean, you will have to have it ultimately, but I think you can build solid with some good game plan. As you see, I got the shirt in today. We should have everything on the website. We're hoping by Wednesday. We'll update that Monday on the Smash. Maybe we'll have an update. If not, Tuesday, we'll have all of the gear in. We're going to get it all in because we're going to do some combo packs, which will save people money. So we want to be able to put it all up at once. So everybody will be by next week for sure. We just don't know which day. Support us there. The ALS shirts went out. You should be getting them daily now. Throw some pictures up. Show the support for not only Kevin, but all of the ALS community. I think those have been awesome. Going to be a great week. We got I think we got at least, I know we got one guy sweating. He's in first and maybe up there in the $8 in the golf, which starts, or it already started. So going to be a fun night watching the sweat there. Hopefully he takes down the $8 for Guts Corner. So a lot of good green screens in there in golf. I don't know if you have any sweats. I don't have. I'm bubbling right now, so I got some chance to make my money, but nothing major. I don't think. I did do the big 275 today in round 4. So we'll see if that gets fun later on this evening. So with that, JB behind the mic, Tambo as always. I will see you Monday night for the Smash at 7:30 Eastern.